I would imagine, especially given the economic climate right now, and especially with real estate and interest rates, there's probably a bit more of those opportunities popping up. And we've talked privately on with the short-term debt. There's a lot of multifamily over the past few years has been bought with bridge debt, which is 2-3 years with 1 year extensions up to 5 years a lot of times. But those extensions aren't guaranteed. They're usually performance based. And in whatever reason, at some point they're going to need to sell or refinance. Usually refinance is actually lately it's been selling has been the exit strategy because the market tailwinds. But refinance is usually the primary objective, so they can finish out their business plan. So have you seen any uptick lately, or are you anticipating any uptick in these type of gap funds coming available on ongoing projects or new projects that are not able to raise because of market conditions?
Short answer, yes. Longer answer, though, is I don't generally prefer to be invested in distressed situations. I think if like somebody like you that's raising a fund right now, and if you can put in a flexible mandate, I think it's quite possible that you're going to see a bunch of deals that are distressed over the summer where maybe they bought it a couple years ago and now they're cash flow negative because they didn't buy a rate cap. Nobody anticipated rates going up, or maybe they just operated poorly. So they're totally fine losing all of the investor money or almost all of it, and they just want to sell it for the loan amount. And that might be a great opportunity for you to swoop in and say, okay, cool. I'll buy this at, like 20% off of retail. And then now you and your investors can make all that money. I think those will exist. I haven't seen them yet, but everybody says they're coming, and it's quite possible they'll come. For me personally, most of the stuff I look for are these fundraising shortfalls. So if you just look at my opportunity set and you just look at the stuff that people refer to me, which is not representative of the market at all, you would think like 99% of people can't raise their money, like can't raise enough money for closing, because that's what people know me as, and that's what they refer to me. So like almost all of my situations are like, hey, dude, I got a great deal, but I'm short XYZ, and I have, between 0 to 7 days left, right? So that's kind of the situations I look for. Another one, I guess I should mention that kind of dovetails with this is I've seen occasionally with the rate raises going so quickly, I've seen lenders actually come back right before closing and say, hey, Chris, remember when I said, and I put it on a term sheet, that I was going to lend you $15 million for your deal? We actually meant 13. So go find an extra $2 million. That's your problem now. Yeah. And now it's like way too late. You can't get another lender. And even if you do get another lender, they're going to say the same thing. Yeah. So this is when you call Ethan and you say, hey, man, I need to close this right now. I got to just raise $2 more million after closing. Like, can you help me?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to talk about the loan guarantor or KP side at all, but that's also something that I do. And I get a lot of opportunities like that. And that's where I see the other portion of deal flow. So for folks that aren't familiar with being a key principal or a loan guarantor, if in a typical commercial deal, the lender requires that the lead sponsors show net worth that exceeds the loan amount, and then show liquidity that exceeds 10% of the loan amount. So for certain teams that either don't have the net worth or don't have the liquidity or don't have either, or sometimes they might not have enough experience, then they need to bring in another person onto their sponsorship team. And that's where I can play a role. I keep a very high percentage of my net worth liquid in my life insurance policies typically.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately it's a great option just to have available. Not that you'll use it a lot, but I don't know if this is the best example. You're like the rich uncle that doesn't want to do any deals, but the one that you just really need them on. And if it makes sense, yeah, you'll consider it.
That's generally the way I like to position myself. And then I like to tell people, I made a good number of gap loans to sponsors that had famous KPs. And I was always a little bit surprised that their famous KPs that were willing to sign on the debt were not willing to gap fund them. But that's because, maybe their business model is they don't have that much liquidity for them to do that, or it's all restricted, or they don't even pay attention to the deal they're on. They're on 50 with their students or whatever. So who cares? But I've always found that interesting. So, whenever
that always scares me. I see that a lot too. And it's like, you don't have experience. They have tons of it, but like, who's really running the ship.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm not trying to fault them at all. I'm just saying it happens. So whenever I get if I'm talking to somebody seriously about being the loan guarantor and I kind of just sense maybe they're considering something else, I just straight up tell them like, hey, the benefit of using me is if we're short on fundraising, I'll just fund the gap.
Yeah.
So you have certainty of close right out of the gate. You pick
Yeah.
some other loan guarantor. I have no idea what they do. They might do the gap. They might not have enough cash. They certainly won't have as much cash as me. And then maybe they're not willing to do it, or they don't know how to structure it, or they don't care. So it's very different versus, I professionally make gap loans to teams.
Yeah. And that provides a lot of value to operators that, like when they're presenting offers, like funds typically can get better terms than someone who's going to syndicate, because if the seller knows, hey,
Absolutely.
you've got cash in the bank. So if I was an operator, I would want to work with you, even if I wasn't going to work with you on every deal, but just to have that relationship and knowing that, hey, this is possible, and potentially leverage that to get better deals.
Absolutely.